Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today, we're taking a close look at those amazing guardians in our bodies, T cells.
It's truly remarkable how they recognize threats, isn't it?
Yeah, but to be honest, it sounds pretty complex.
Well, think of it this way. Every T cell is equipped to identify a very specific enemy.
Huh. Okay, so where do we even begin with this?
It all hinges on two key players, the T cell receptor, or TCR for short,
Oh, TCR.
and of course the MHC molecule.
TCR, MHC. Are they like the names on the microscopic wanted posters?
You could say that. Imagine the TCR as a personalized sensor on each T cell.
A center.
It's designed to detect a tiny, unique fragment of a pathogen, like a fingerprint at a crime scene.
So each TCR is searching for a very specific bad guy.
Precisely. And the MHC molecule, that's our display case, presenting those pathogen fragments, those antigens, to the TCR.
Like holding up the fingerprint for the TCR to analyze.
Exactly. It's that TCR-MHC interaction that determines friend or foe.
Wow, that's fascinating. So tell me more about this TCR. What's it like?
Well, structurally, it's made up of two protein chains,
Your chains.
either alpha and beta, or sometimes gamma and delta.
Oh.
And each chain plays a crucial role in making sure the TCR can lock onto its target.
So double the trouble for those pathogens.
You could put it that way. These chains work together to create a unique binding site.
So it's like a lock and key.
Exactly. Only the right TCR can bind to the right MHC, presenting a specific antigen.
That makes sense. So MHC is displaying the antigen, but are all MHC molecules the same?
Ah, good question. We actually have two main types, MHC class 1 and MHC class 2.
Two different types.
Think of them as different departments with specialized tasks.
Okay, tell me more about these departments.
MHC class I molecules are like security guards. They're posted on almost all of your cells,
Okay,
presenting antigens that come from within the cell itself.
so if a virus gets inside a cell and starts messing things up.
Exactly. It's like MHC class I is waving a flag saying, "Help, I've been hijacked."
Wow, that's a great way to put it. So what about class 2?
MHC class 2 molecules, on the other hand,
Yeah.
they're mainly found on specialized immune cells, like macrophages and dendritic cells. The real detectives of the system.
Okay, interesting. What do they do?
They present antigens that have been collected from outside the cell. It's a different approach to security.
So two classes of MHC, each with a specific role. Why is that division so important?
It's all about coordination. MHC class I alerts the immune system to internal threats like viruses,
Right.
while MHC class 2 presents external threats like bacteria that the macrophages have engulfed.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like having different branches of the immune system dealing with different types of threats.
Precisely. Now, let's get to the moment of truth. The TCR actually interacting with the MHC molecule.
Okay, yeah, how does that work?
It's not just a quick touch and go. They bind together, and it forms what we call an immunological synapse.
The synapse, like the connections between neurons.
A similar concept. Think of it as a secure communication channel between the T cell and the antigen-presenting cell.
Like a secure line.
Exactly. That's where the T cell gathers all the information it needs to decide whether to launch an attack.
So it's not just recognizing the antigen, but it's having a whole conversation.
Precisely. And this interaction sets off a cascade of events inside the T cell,
A cascade.
ultimately leading to the production of signaling molecules, like IL-2.
What does IL-2 do?
It basically tells the T cell to start dividing and fight the infection. One tiny interaction, and it can unleash a chain reaction.
That's incredible. But wait, with all those T cells, how does the right one even find the MHC molecule? It seems like finding a needle in a haystack.
You're right, it's a challenge,
Okay.
but there are these other molecules called co-receptors that play a crucial role.
Co-receptors, what are those?
They help to stabilize the interaction between the TCR and the MHC, making the whole recognition process more efficient. CD4 and CD8 are the key players here.
CD4, CD8, are those like different badges that identify the type of T cell we're dealing with?
Precisely. Helper T cells, those that orchestrate the immune response, express CD4. Cytotoxic T cells, the frontline soldiers that directly kill infected cells, express CD8.
So CD4 helps coordinate the attack, and CD8 carries it out. It's amazing how this all works together. But how do scientists actually see all of this happening? These molecules are so tiny.
It's a challenge, but they've developed incredible imaging techniques. They can actually see the molecules interacting in real time.
Wow, so it's like watching a microscopic action movie.
Exactly. But they also use biochemical assays to measure the signals being sent within the cell.
So it's like they're piecing together a puzzle, but with molecules instead of cardboard pieces.
Precisely. They can trace each step of the activation process, from that initial TCR-MHC interaction to the final production of IL-2.
That's incredible. And understanding these steps is what allows scientists to develop new treatments for diseases, right?
Absolutely. It's all about understanding each step so we can target interventions and therapies more effectively.
This is mind-blowing. It's incredible to think that all of this is happening inside of us right now. All these tiny interactions working to keep us healthy.
It is truly remarkable, isn't it? Billions of T cells are patrolling your body at any given time,
Billions.
each with its own unique TCR, ready to recognize and eliminate any threat. It really is a remarkable system. And with billions of T cells and unique TCRs, it makes you wonder how our body ensures that the right T cell gets activated for the right threat. It seems like there's so much room for error.
Right. It would be like chaos if any T cell could just bind to any antigen.
Exactly. That's where MHC diversity comes in. It's a crucial factor in making our immune system so effective.
MHC diversity. Tell me more about that.
Did you know that MHC genes are among the most polymorphic genes in the entire human genome?
Polymorphic. Does that mean there are a lot of different versions?
Exactly. There are many different versions or alleles of MHC genes within the population, and you inherit a unique combination of those alleles from your parents. So everyone's MHC molecules are a bit different.
Wow, so everyone's immune system has its own unique way of recognizing threats.
That's right. And it's actually a good thing for the survival of our species as a whole.
How so?
Well, if a new pathogen emerges, it's less likely to be able to infect everyone because some individuals will have MHC molecules that can present its antigens effectively.
So it's like having a backup plan for our species' survival. That's brilliant. But I'm thinking, if our MHC molecules are so diverse, doesn't that make things really complicated for something like organ transplants?
You've hit on a very important point. MHC diversity is a crucial consideration in organ transplantation.
Because if someone receives a transplant,
Their immune system can recognize the donor's MHC molecules as foreign.
so their immune system could attack the transplanted organ.
Yes, and that's why it's so important to find a donor with MHC molecules that are as closely matched to the recipient as possible.
To minimize the risk of rejection.
Exactly. The closer the match, the lower the risk of rejection. It's like trying to find a key that fits the lock perfectly.
Wow, the more we learn about this, the more intricate it all becomes. It's amazing how our bodies balance this incredible diversity with the need for such precise recognition.
It truly is a delicate balance, but we've been focusing so much on the interaction between TCRs and MHC molecules. What happens after a T cell is activated?
Yeah, good question. What happens after those troops are deployed?
Well, the T cell undergoes a remarkable transformation. It becomes a powerful weapon against the infection. But there's a catch. Sometimes this constant state of battle can lead to T cell exhaustion.
T cell exhaustion. What does that mean? It sounds like burnout for our immune system.
That's a pretty good way to put it. T cell exhaustion occurs when T cells are chronically exposed to an antigen, like during a persistent viral infection or in the tumor microenvironment. And over time, these T cells can become, well, worn out and less effective.
So it's like they get tired after being on the front lines for too long. They lose their fighting spirit.
Exactly. They become light responsive to stimulation, they produce fewer cytokines, and they're just less effective at killing infected cells or tumor cells.
And that makes it harder for the immune system to control the infection or eliminate the tumor.
Precisely. And this T cell exhaustion is a major hurdle we face when we're trying to treat chronic infections and cancers.
So is there anything that can be done to prevent or reverse this T cell exhaustion? It sounds like a serious problem.
That's a crucial area of research. Scientists are actively exploring ways to address this challenge. One promising avenue involves a protein called PD-1.
PD-1, what is that?
It stands for Programmed Cell Death Protein 1, and it's like a brake pedal on the T cell.
A brake pedal.
Yeah, it basically tells the T cell to slow down and conserve energy. But sometimes these brakes are on for too long, and that's when we see T cell exhaustion.
Ah, I see. So if the brakes are always on, the P cell can't do its job properly.
Exactly. And that's where these amazing new drugs called checkpoint inhibitors come in.
Checkpoint inhibitors.
Yes, they work by blocking PD-1. They release those brakes and allow the exhausted T cells to become re-energized.
Wow. It's like giving those tired soldiers a much-needed break and then sending them back into battle with renewed vigor.
That's a great analogy. And these checkpoint inhibitors are showing remarkable success in treating certain types of cancers.
That's incredible. It sounds like immunotherapy is truly revolutionizing cancer treatment. It's so inspiring to see how scientific discoveries are leading to these groundbreaking treatments.
It really is an exciting time for immunology and medicine.
So we've got TCRs patrolling, MHC molecules presenting evidence, co-receptors aiding the process, this incredible diversity in MHC molecules, and even checkpoint inhibitors to help our exhausted T cells. But I'm thinking, we've talked a lot about cancer. What about immunotherapy's potential in other areas, like for autoimmune diseases, where the immune system is actually attacking the body's own tissues?
That's a great question. Autoimmune diseases present a unique challenge because, in these cases, the immune system is actually the culprit. So, the goal of immunotherapy for autoimmune diseases is actually the opposite of what we've been discussing.
The opposite.
Yes, instead of trying to boost the immune response, we're trying to dampen it, to calm things down.
So instead of revving up the immune system, we're trying to put on the brakes.
Exactly. And there are several approaches being explored. One approach is to use monoclonal antibodies that target very specific immune cells.
Specific immune cells.
Yes. Or the antibodies target signaling molecules that are involved in that autoimmune response. It's all about precision.
So these antibodies are like peacekeepers, trying to calm down that overactive immune system.
That's a good way to put it. And another approach is to use drugs that suppress the immune system more broadly.
Isn't that risky? I mean, wouldn't suppressing the immune system make us more vulnerable to infections?
It's definitely a delicate balance. The goal is to find just the right level of suppression.
Enough to control that autoimmune response, but not so much that it weakens the body's ability to fight off infections.
Precisely. It's a constant challenge, but it's a key focus of research for autoimmune diseases.
It's incredible to see how immunotherapy is being applied to such a wide range of diseases. It's like a Swiss Army knife of medicine.
That's a great way to describe it. And as our understanding of the immune system keeps growing, so too will our ability to develop even more effective immunotherapy treatments.
This deep dive into immunotherapy has certainly been eye-opening. But I have to admit, it's also made me realize how much we still don't know. Are there any big mysteries that scientists are still trying to solve when it comes to T-cell activation?
Oh, absolutely. The world of immunology is full of unanswered questions. One of the biggest mysteries is how the immune system figures out which T cells to activate in response to a particular threat.
That's a good question. With billions of T cells patrolling the body, how does it know which ones to send into battle?
That's the million-dollar question. We know that the TCRs recognize specific antigens, but the actual process by which the immune system selects the most effective T cells for that given threat, well, it's still largely a mystery.
So it's like the immune system is playing this high-stakes strategy game, choosing the right troops for the right battle.
Exactly. And trying to understand the rules of that game is a major focus of research. It's like cracking the code of the immune system.
Sounds like there's still plenty of work to be done. But the progress that's been made in understanding T-cell activation is truly remarkable, and it's really exciting to think about what the future holds for immunotherapy.
I agree. We are truly on the cusp of a new era in medicine. We can harness the power of the immune system to fight disease in ways that were once unimaginable.
This deep dive has been a fascinating journey into the world of the immune system. From those initial interactions between TCRs and MHC molecules to the complexities of T-cell exhaustion, and now the amazing potential of immunotherapy.
It's been an incredible journey, and it really highlights the power of scientific inquiry,
Right.
the dedication of all those researchers around the world working to unlock the secrets of the immune system.
Absolutely. And all of this incredible activity is happening inside each and every one of us right now. It really makes you appreciate the complexity of the human body.
It does. It's like a whole universe within us. And it's a constant reminder that we're more than just the sum of our parts. We are these intricate ecosystems, teeming with life and complexity.
That's a beautiful way to put it. This deep dive has given us a glimpse into the immune system, but I'm realizing there are so many other ecosystems within us. We have the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the urinary system, the musculoskeletal system.
The integumentary system, the list goes on and on.
Exactly. And each one is interconnected, forming this complex web of interactions.
It's a web that ultimately sustains life.
It's incredible. But I'm thinking, with all these different systems operating at the same time, how do they all work together? It seems like it would be pure chaos.
That's where communication comes in. Just like any well-coordinated team, our body systems need constant communication to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Communication. So how do they communicate? Is it like a phone call between organs?
It's more like this complex network of signals.
Hmm.
Different systems use a variety of messengers to communicate.
Messengers. like tiny couriers delivering instructions.
Exactly. These messengers could be hormones, neurotransmitters, cytokines, or even just physical cues.
Physical cues.
Yeah, things like changes in blood flow or pressure. It's a bustling city with all these different messengers zipping around, making sure everything runs smoothly.
And I imagine this is particularly important when it comes to the immune system.
Absolutely. It needs to be able to communicate with other systems to coordinate a response to a threat.
Right, to make sure everything is working together.
Exactly. So, for example, when you get an infection, the immune system releases cytokines, right?
Right, those signaling molecules.
Yes. Those cytokines can travel through the bloodstream and actually act on other organs, like the brain.
The brain. So what happens there?
Well, for one thing, they can trigger a fever.
So the fever is actually the immune system talking to the brain, telling it to turn up the heat to fight the infection.
Exactly. That fever helps create an environment that's less hospitable to the pathogens, and it boosts the activity of immune cells as well.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's incredible how all these systems can work together. But I'm also thinking, what happens if the communication breaks down? Can that cause problems?
Absolutely. When communication breaks down between systems, it can have some serious consequences.
Can you give me some examples?
Of course. Take type 1 diabetes, for instance. In that condition, the immune system mistakenly attacks the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas.
So the immune system is misinterpreting the message, attacking cells that it should be protecting.
Exactly. And that attack leads to a deficiency in insulin, a hormone that regulates blood sugar levels.
And without enough insulin, the body can't use glucose properly for energy.
Precisely. And that leads to a buildup of glucose in the blood, which can damage organs and tissues over time.
So this communication breakdown between the immune system and the pancreas has a domino effect on the whole body.
Exactly. It really highlights how important communication between different systems is to maintain health.
Wow. It's amazing how interconnected everything is. But are there other examples of communication breakdowns like that can cause problems?
Oh, there are countless examples. Look at heart disease. Chronic stress can lead to an overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system.
The sympathetic nervous system, that's the one responsible for the fight or flight response, right?
That's the one. And when it's chronically activated, it's like the body is stuck in emergency mode.
Constantly on high alert.
Exactly. And that chronic activation can damage blood vessels and increase the risk of heart attack or stroke.
So even stress can have a huge impact on our physical health.
Absolutely. Our mental and emotional well-being is truly just as important as our physical health.
This deep dive has certainly been eye-opening. It's incredible how complex and interconnected our bodies are.
It truly is. And understanding these connections is so important for maintaining health and preventing disease.
Speaking of connections, maybe it's time to delve into another system that plays a big role in communication and coordination throughout the body, the nervous system.
The nervous system, that's like the body's central command center, right?
Exactly. It's responsible for receiving, processing, and transmitting information throughout the body. It controls everything from our movements and senses to our thoughts and emotions.
It's amazing to think about all the different tasks the nervous system handles, from something as simple as blinking to something as complex as composing a symphony. It's all orchestrated by this incredible network of cells.
It really is like a supercomputer, constantly processing information and sending out instructions.
That's a great analogy. And just like any other complex system, it relies on efficient communication to function properly.
So how does communication work within the nervous system? Is it similar to how the immune system uses cytokines?
The nervous system uses a different type of messenger called neurotransmitters.
Neurotransmitters. I think I've heard of those.
Which are chemicals that transmit signals between neurons.
Neurons. Those are the specialized cells that make up the nervous system, right?
That's right. And they communicate with each other through those chemical messengers, the neurotransmitters.
So it's like a relay race.
Yes.
Each neuron passes the baton or neurotransmitter to the next neuron in line.
That's a great way to visualize it. And that relay of signals allows information to travel super quickly and efficiently throughout the body.
It really is incredible how fast those signals travel. But what happens when a signal actually reaches its destination? How does it trigger a response?
When a neurotransmitter reaches its target cell, it binds to a specific receptor on that cell, kind of like a key fitting into a lock.
So it's like a targeted delivery system.
Exactly, making sure the message goes to the right place. And when that neurotransmitter binds, it triggers a whole cascade of events within the target cell,
A cascade of events.
leading to a specific response.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, let's take muscle contraction. When you decide to move your arm,
Okay.
A signal travels from your brain down your spinal cord and out to the muscles in your arm.
Okay, I'm following.
And at the junction between a neuron and a muscle fiber, there's a specialized structure called the neuromuscular junction.
The neuromuscular junction. So it's like a meeting point.
Yes, a meeting point between the nervous system and the muscular system. And when that signal reaches the neuromuscular junction, it triggers the release of a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine.
Acetylcholine. That sounds familiar.
You have a good memory. Acetylcholine actually has a bunch of different roles in the body.
Oh, right. Like in the brain, too.
Exactly. It's involved in memory and learning. But at the neuromuscular junction, acetylcholine acts as the messenger, the one that tells the muscle fiber to contract.
So it's like the trigger that sets the muscle into motion?
Exactly. Acetylcholine binds to receptors on the muscle fiber, and that triggers a whole cascade of events, ultimately leading to that shortening of the muscle fiber.
Wow, it's amazing how such a tiny molecule can have such a big effect. But I'm curious, how does the body regulate all this activity? I mean, with all those signals flying around, it seems like things could get out of control really easily.
That's where feedback loops come into play.
Feedback loops.
Yes, the nervous system is constantly monitoring its own activity and making adjustments to keep things in balance.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. Imagine you're driving a car and you start going too fast. You see the speedometer needle rising, right? What do?
Ease up on the gas.
Exactly. So you slow down. And your body has similar mechanisms. It's got its own internal speedometer, so to speak, constantly monitoring things and making adjustments to stay within a safe range.
So it's a delicate dance. All those different systems adjusting their activity to stay in harmony.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And that intricate dance is essential for our survival.
Well, this deep dive into the nervous system has been fascinating. It's incredible to see how this intricate network of cells communicates and coordinates activity throughout the body.
It really is. And we've barely scratched the surface of what we know about the nervous system.
I can imagine. But I'm also curious about how this understanding of the nervous system is being applied in medicine. Are there any treatments or therapies that directly target the nervous system?
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole field of medicine dedicated to that. It's called neurology.
Neurology. That covers a wide range of conditions, right?
It does. Everything from headaches and seizures to stroke and Alzheimer's disease.
Wow, that's a huge field.
Yeah.
But I'm particularly interested in how our understanding of neurotransmitters is being used to develop new treatments.
Ah, yes. Neurotransmitters are key targets for a whole range of drugs.
What kind of drugs?
Drugs for both neurological and psychiatric disorders.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. For example, antidepressants. They often work by increasing the levels of certain neurotransmitters in the brain, like serotonin and dopamine.
So they're boosting the signals that are involved in regulating mood.
Exactly. And then you have antipsychotic medications. They often work by blocking the activity of certain neurotransmitters, like dopamine, for example.
So they're dampening the signals that are thought to be overactive in psychosis.
Precisely. And there are many more examples. Drugs that target the neurotransmitter GABA to treat anxiety. Drugs that target acetylcholine to treat Alzheimer's disease.
It's amazing how our understanding of these tiny molecules is leading to treatments that can really make a difference.
It really is. And as our knowledge of the nervous system continues to grow, we can expect even more innovative treatments to emerge.
Well, this deep dive has certainly been a whirlwind tour of the nervous system. We've explored how it communicates, how it regulates activity, and how we can actually target it with drugs to treat disease.
It's a remarkably complex and fascinating system.
It really is. But, we've been focusing so much on the nervous system, but there's another system that's often overlooked, and it plays a really crucial role in maintaining health. And that's the lymphatic system.
The lymphatic system. Oh, the one with all the lymph nodes.
That's the one. It's a whole network of vessels and tissues and organs that help maintain fluid balance in the body. It transports fats. And perhaps most importantly, it helps fight infections.
Right. It's like the body's drainage system, in a way, collecting excess fluid and waste products.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's so much more than just a garbage disposal, right?
Absolutely. It's a key player in the immune response. And it's home to a whole variety of immune cells, including those T cells we talked about earlier.
So it's like a training ground.
Yeah.
And a deployment center for the immune army.
A great way to put it. The lymph nodes, which are those small bean-shaped organs scattered throughout the body, act as filtering stations. They trap pathogens and present them to immune cells.
And that's where those TCR-MHC interactions come into play.
Precisely. The T cells in the lymph nodes can encounter antigens presented by MHC molecules, and that triggers an immune response.
So the lymphatic system is like a battlefield, where the immune cells clash with those invaders.
That's one way to think about it. And the lymphatic vessels act like the highways, transporting immune cells throughout the body.
It's incredible how all these systems are connected, working together to protect us.
It's a testament to how efficient and adaptable the human body really is.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned fighting infections, but the lymphatic system is also involved in something else that's not so good. Cancer metastasis.
Yes, that's a darker side of the lymphatic system.
Because cancer cells can actually exploit the lymphatic vessels, can't they?
Unfortunately, yes. They can use the lymphatic system to spread to other parts of the body.
So instead of being a highway for immune cells, it becomes an escape route for those cancer cells.
Exactly. And this process called metastasis is one of the biggest challenges in treating cancer.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
The lymphatic system is vital for immunity, but it can also be a pathway for cancer to spread.
That's a good way to put it. And it's a delicate balance for sure. Researchers are working hard to understand how those cancer cells interact with the lymphatic system so we can develop new therapies that block metastasis.
So it's like trying to outsmart those cancer cells, finding a way to block their escape routes.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of very promising research happening in this area.
This deep dive has taken us on a journey through several amazing systems in the body. The immune system, the nervous system, and now the lymphatic system.
We've seen how each system is vital for maintaining health and how they're all interconnected.
And working together in this delicate balance.
Absolutely. It's incredible, isn't it?
It is, but I'm wondering, are there any health challenges specifically associated with the lymphatic system that we should be aware of?
That's a great question. While the lymphatic system is incredibly resilient, it can be affected by a variety of conditions: infections, cancer, and autoimmune disorders.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. One common condition is lymphedema.
Lymphedema.
It's a buildup of fluid in the tissues because of a blockage or damage to the lymphatic vessels.
So if those vessels are blocked or damaged,
The fluid can't drain properly, and it often causes swelling, usually in the arms or legs. It can be chronic, requiring ongoing management.
wow. So what causes that blockage or damage to those lymphatic vessels?
There are a few different things that can contribute to it: surgery, radiation therapy, infection, and sometimes even genetics.
So it's not always something you can prevent.
Unfortunately, no, but there are things we can do to manage the symptoms.
That's good to know. Are there other health challenges associated with the lymphatic system we should be aware of?
Yes, lymphoma is another condition that can affect the lymphatic system, and that's actually a type of cancer that originates in the lymphatic system.
Lymphoma. That sounds serious.
It can be, but thankfully there are many effective treatments available today.
That's good to hear. What are some symptoms of lymphoma that people should watch out for?
Well, the symptoms vary depending on the type and stage of lymphoma, but some common signs include swollen lymph nodes, fatigue, fever, night sweats, and weight loss.
So those are definitely things to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Early detection and treatment are key.
Well, this deep dive into the lymphatic system has been incredibly informative. It's really amazing how this often overlooked system plays such a crucial role in our overall health.
It really does. And it reminds us that even the smallest, seemingly insignificant parts of our bodies can have a huge impact on our well-being.
It's true, everything is connected.
Exactly. But let's shift gears now and talk about another amazing system that plays a crucial role in maintaining our health.
The endocrine system.
The endocrine system. That's the one with all the hormones, right?
That's the one. It's a complex network of glands that produce and secrete hormones. And hormones are those chemical messengers that regulate a wide range of bodily functions.
Right. They're like the body's internal communication system, sending messages from one part of the body to another. That's a great analogy. They're like tiny couriers, carrying instructions, making sure everything is working in harmony.
It's amazing to think about how these tiny molecules can have such a huge effect. But I'm curious, how do hormones actually work? How do they know which cells to target and what messages to deliver?
Each hormone has a specific target cell or tissue, and it exerts its effects by binding to receptors on those cells.
Receptors again, so it's like that lock and key mechanism we were talking about before.
Exactly. Only the right hormone can bind to the right receptor. And just like with those TCR-MHC interactions, that specificity is crucial for making sure the hormones have the right effects.
So it's a targeted delivery system.
Precisely, ensuring that the message reaches the right place and triggers the right response.
But with so many different hormones floating around in our bodies,
Mhm.
how does it all stay organized? It seems like things could get mixed up pretty easily.
That's where feedback loops come into play. The endocrine system is tightly regulated by a series of feedback loops, and those feedback loops ensure that hormone levels stay within a healthy range.
Feedback loops,
Right.
those are so important for maintaining balance.
They are. It's like a thermostat in your house. When the temperature gets too low, the thermostat tells the furnace to kick in and heat things up, right?
Right, and once it reaches the right temperature,
The thermostat tells the furnace to turn off.
so it's a self-regulating system.
Mm.
The body is constantly monitoring hormone levels and making adjustments to maintain that balance.
Exactly. And that balance is really essential for our overall health and well-being.
Well, this explanation of the endocrine system has been really helpful. It's amazing to see how these tiny hormones play such a big role in regulating so many different bodily functions.
You really do, and we've really only just begun to scratch the surface of what we know about the endocrine system. There's still so much to discover about how it works and how it interacts with the other systems.
But even what we know now is pretty remarkable.
Hmm.
I mean, the progress that's been made in understanding the endocrine system has led to so many life-saving treatments for hormonal disorders.
That's true. From insulin for diabetes to hormone replacement therapy for menopause, understanding the endocrine system has really changed the way we treat a wide range of conditions.
Absolutely, it's fascinating stuff. But can you give me a specific example of a hormone system and how it works? I'm a very visual learner.
Sure. Let's look at the thyroid hormone system. The thyroid gland is located in your neck, and it produces hormones that are essential for regulating metabolism, growth, and development.
Okay, so the thyroid gland is like the control center for these hormones.
Exactly. And like all hormones, they work by binding to receptors.
Right, the lock and key system.
Precisely. Now, with thyroid hormones, their receptors are actually located inside the cell in the nucleus.
The nucleus. Isn't that the cell's control center?
That's right. So unlike some receptors that are on the cell surface, the thyroid hormone receptors are tucked away inside the cell's command center.
Wow, that's interesting. So the hormones actually have to get inside the cell to deliver their message.
Exactly. And when the thyroid hormone binds to its receptor, it can actually turn genes on or off, which can influence all sorts of cellular processes.
So it's like flipping a switch.
Yeah.
Controlling the cell's activity.
Precisely. Now, what's really fascinating is that the thyroid hormone receptors can also bind to other molecules. They're called copressors and coactivators.
Copressors and coactivators, what do they do?
They basically fine-tune the activity of that thyroid hormone receptor. The copressors, well, they repress gene expression, and the coactivators activate gene expression.
So it's like having a dimmer switch.
Exactly, allowing for a much more nuanced control of the cell's activity. And the balance between those copressors and coactivators can actually influence how sensitive a cell is to the thyroid hormone.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like this whole orchestra of molecules working together. But this is all happening at such a microscopic level. How do scientists actually study those interactions?
That's a great question. Scientists have all sorts of really sophisticated techniques to study how hormones work.
Like what?
Well, one common technique is to use reporter genes. They produce a measurable signal when they're activated.
Reporter genes. So what do they report on?
Well, scientists can insert these reporter genes into cells, along with the hormone receptor that they're studying.
Okay, I'm following.
Then they add the hormone to those cells and see if the reporter gene gets activated.
Ah, so it's like a trap for the hormone.
Exactly. And if the reporter gene is activated, they know that the hormone is binding to its receptor and triggering a response.
That's brilliant.
It is. And another technique that's often used is to use knockout mice.
Knockout mice, what are those?
Knockout mice are mice that have been genetically engineered to lack a specific gene.
Ah, so they're missing a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And by studying these knockout mice, scientists can figure out what that missing gene actually does.
So for example, if they knock out the gene for a particular hormone receptor,
Then they can see what happens when that hormone can't bind to its target cells anymore.
that makes sense.
It gives us incredibly valuable insights into the role of that hormone.
Wow. It's amazing how these incredibly sophisticated techniques allows scientists to unlock these secrets.
It really is. And as we keep learning more about this system, we can develop new and innovative treatments for hormonal disorders.
It's incredible how much progress has been made in understanding the endocrine system. It's amazing to see how these tiny hormones play such a big role in regulating so many different bodily functions.
It truly is, and we've really only just begun to scratch the surface of what we know about the endocrine system. There's still so much to discover about how it works, and there's still so much to discover about how it works and how it interacts with the other systems in the body.
But even what we know now is pretty remarkable. I mean, the progress that's been made in understanding the endocrine system has led to so many life-saving treatments for hormonal disorders.
That's true. From insulin for diabetes to hormone replacement therapy for menopause, understanding the endocrine system has really changed the way we treat a wide range of conditions.
Absolutely. But, we've talked about the immune system, the nervous system, the lymphatic system, and now the endocrine system. And it really strikes me how all of these different systems that we've discussed today, they all work together in this incredible symphony of life.
You're absolutely right. It really speaks to the interconnectedness and complexity of the human body, doesn't it?
It does. It's a reminder that we are so much more than just a collection of individual parts. We are intricate ecosystems, teeming with life and wonder.
Beautifully put. But before we get too philosophical, maybe we should take a moment to appreciate the sheer ingenuity of our bodies. I mean, how did all of these systems evolve to work together so seamlessly?
That's a great question. I mean, the evolution of the human body is a story that spans billions of years.
It is a story of constant adaptation and refinement, with these different systems evolving to meet the challenges of survival.
So it's like this constant process of trial and error, with the most successful adaptations being passed down through generations.
Exactly. And over time, those adaptations have led to the incredible complexity and sophistication of the human body that we see today.
It's mind-blowing when you think about the vast stretches of time, the countless generations that have contributed to our existence. But are there any specific examples of those evolutionary adaptations that have shaped the systems we've been discussing today?
Of course. One of the most remarkable adaptations is the evolution of the adaptive immune system.
The adaptive immune system, that's the one with the T cells and the MHC molecules, right?
That's the one. This system allows our bodies to recognize and remember specific pathogens. It's incredibly sophisticated, allowing for a really targeted defense against a wide range of threats. And it's a relatively recent innovation, evolutionarily speaking.
Recent. So when did it appear?
It only appeared in vertebrates.
So our vertebrate ancestors were the first to develop this powerful weapon against disease.
Exactly. And it's given vertebrates a huge advantage in terms of survival.
It's truly incredible how evolution has shaped our bodies into these incredible machines, fighting off disease, adapting to ever-changing environments. It's remarkable.
It is. And the more we learn about the human body, the more we uncover about its complexity and its beauty.
I completely agree. But speaking of amazing adaptations, let's shift gears for a moment. Let's talk about our senses.
Our senses, yes, those gateways to the world around us.
Exactly. Sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. It's incredible how much information our senses process every second. But how do they actually work? How do those external stimuli get translated into signals our brain can understand?
Well, each sense relies on these specialized sensory receptors that are tuned to detect a very specific type of stimulus.
Sensory receptors. So they're like tiny antennas picking up signals from the environment.
That's a great analogy. And those receptors convert the external stimuli into electrical signals that travel along nerves to the brain.
So it's a chain of communication from the sensory receptors to those nerves and then up to the brain.
Exactly. And then the brain interprets those signals, and that creates our conscious experience of the world.
It's amazing to think about all that complex processing that's happening behind the scenes all the time, just so we can experience the world around us.
It really is. And each of our senses has its own unique set of receptors and pathways, allowing us to perceive those different aspects of our environment.
Okay, so let's break it down sense by sense. Let's start with vision. How do our eyes actually capture those rays of light and turn them into images?
Well, light enters the eye through the pupil, and it's focused by the lens onto the retina.
The retina, that's the layer of light-sensitive cells at the back of the eye, right?
That's right, and that's really where the magic happens.
Okay, so what happens there?
Well, the retina contains these specialized photoreceptor cells called rods and cones.
Rods and cones. Okay, I've heard of those.
The rods are responsible for vision in low-light conditions. So you can think of them as the night vision goggles of our eyes.
Yeah.
And then you have the cones, which are responsible for color vision and visual acuity.
So they're like the high-definition cameras.
Exactly. And when light hits those photoreceptor cells, it triggers a series of chemical reactions.
Chemical reactions.
And those reactions generate electrical signals.
And then those signals travel along the optic nerve to the brain, where they're interpreted as images.
Precisely. It's a remarkable process that allows us to perceive the world in all its visual splendor.
It really is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about hearing? How do our ears capture those sound waves and transform them into something that we can perceive?
Well, the sound waves enter the ear through the ear canal,
Right.
and they cause the eardrum to vibrate.
The eardrum, that thin membrane that separates the outer ear from the middle ear.
That's the one. So the eardrum is vibrating in response to those sound waves, and those vibrations are then transmitted to 3 tiny bones in the middle ear: the malleus, the incus, and the stapes.
Wow, 3 tiny bones. Those must be some of the smallest bones in the body.
They are. And those bones amplify the vibrations and transmit them to the cochlea.
The cochlea. Now that's a spiral-shaped, fluid-filled structure, right?
That's right. It's located in the inner ear. And this is where those sound waves are actually converted into electrical signals.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, the cochlea has all these tiny hair cells that are super sensitive to different frequencies of sound.
So each hair cell is like tuned to a different note, like a microscopic piano.
That's a great analogy. And when those hair cells are bent by the vibrations, they generate electrical signals.
Okay, so then what happens?
Well, those signals travel along the auditory nerve to the brain.
And that's how we perceive sound.
That's how it works. It's incredible, isn't it? We can perceive everything from the whisper of the wind to the roar of a jet engine, all thanks to those tiny hair cells in our ears.
It's absolutely incredible. And it makes you realize how important it is to protect our hearing.
Absolutely. But let's move on to our next sense: smell. How does our nose capture those airborne molecules and turn them into scents?
That's a good one. Because those scent molecules are invisible.
They are. So when we inhale, those odor molecules enter the nasal cavity, and up there they bind to olfactory receptors.
Olfactory receptors. And where are those located?
High up in the nasal cavity, in a patch of tissue called the olfactory epithelium.
Aha. Oh,
So those olfactory receptors, they're like these tiny sensors detecting those specific odor molecules.
and when those molecules bind to those receptors,
It triggers a cascade of events, and those events generate, you guessed it, electrical signals.
and then those signals travel along the olfactory nerve to the brain where they're interpreted as those different smells.
Exactly. But what's really interesting about our sense of smell is that it's directly connected to the limbic system.
The limbic system, that's the part of the brain that's involved in emotion and memory, right?
That's right. And that's why certain smells can sometimes trigger really strong emotional responses.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Like a certain scent can instantly transport you back to a specific memory.
Exactly. Like the smell of freshly baked cookies might take you back to your childhood. Or the scent of a particular perfume might evoke memories of a loved one.
It's so true. Our senses are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But what about taste? How do our taste buds distinguish between sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami?
Our taste buds actually contain these specialized taste receptor cells.
Okay.
And each type of receptor cell is sensitive to a different taste.
Ah, okay. So how does that work?
Well, when food molecules bind to these receptors, it generates those electrical signals. And those signals travel along taste nerves to the brain.
So each taste bud is like a tiny laboratory, analyzing the chemical composition of the food.
That's one way to think about it. And then the brain actually integrates those signals with information from our sense of smell.
Ah, so that's how we get that overall perception of flavor.
Exactly. Our senses of taste and smell work together to give us a much more complete sensory experience.
That's why food can taste really bland when you have a cold. Your sense of smell is impaired, so you're not getting that full flavor profile.
That's a great example. It really shows how our senses work together to create this symphony of sensations.
It's incredible. Okay, so last but not least, let's talk about touch. How does our skin allow us to feel textures, temperatures, and pressures?
Our skin is packed with these sensory receptors that are sensitive to different types of touch stimuli. Some are sensitive to light touch, others to deep pressure, and even vibration.
So it's like we have all these different sensors embedded in our skin, each one tuned to a specific type of touch.
That's a great way to put it. And when those receptors are stimulated, they send those electrical signals along sensory nerves to the brain.
And then our brain interprets those signals as those different types of touch sensations.
Precisely. Our sense of touch is really essential for us to navigate the world around us. It's how we feel the warmth of the sun on our skin, the softness of a feather, the sharpness of a pin.
Wow. Our senses really do provide us with so much information about the world. But it's even more amazing how our brain takes all that information from our senses and creates this cohesive experience.
You're absolutely right. Our brains are constantly being bombarded with sensory input, but somehow it manages to sort through it all. It creates a seamless perception of reality.
It's really a remarkable feat of biological engineering.
It is. And it's just one more example of the incredible power and adaptability of the human brain.
Well, this deep dive into our senses has been fascinating. It's incredible how those senses allow us to experience life in all its richness and diversity.
It has been a pleasure exploring these wonders with you. And remember, listeners, the human body is a remarkable machine. It's capable of amazing things, so take good care of it, nourish it, and always be amazed by its wonders.
That's great advice. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We have. Exploring the immune system, the nervous system, the lymphatic system, the endocrine system, and even our senses.
It's been a whirlwind tour of the human body, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed learning about these incredible systems as much as we have.
Me too.
So until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of science. And remember, there's always more to discover, both within ourselves and in the world around us.